going to look at an example here of a very complicated graph of a function where we know a whole bunch of its limits. This is like the problem on the back of the worksheet by Peterson on limits. So I've got a bunch of limits here on the left, and I've got an XY axis on the right. So we're going to kind of first go through and see what we know and kind of leave clues to ourselves about how to actually connect these with a graph that is a function, and then I'll come back and actually make the connections after that. So I'm going to start first with this limit. As x goes to infinity, f of x approaches -2. So that means as we approach positive infinity, this function is going to have a horizontal asymptote of y equals -2. So I'm going to put that, that's going to be a right-hand asymptote. So I'm going to put that down there as a guideline, but I don't know exactly how the curve is going to approach that yet. I'll work on that later. Now as x goes to -infinity, this is going to approach +1. So that means we're going to have a different horizontal asymptote going to the left. So I'm going to put that in there and label it y equals 1. So our left-hand limit is different than the right-hand limit. Now the next one says, as we approach -2 from the left, the function is approaching -4. So I'm going to go to -2 on the x, find -4 on the y. I'm going to put a little open circle there because I don't know yet if it's actually defined to be that or what. I know it's going to approach that from the left, so I'm going to put a little tail to indicate to myself later when I come back to this that that's only the limit as I approach from the left. Now, as we approach -2 from the right, it's going to be -3. So I'm going to put an open circle there and put a little tail on the right because that's what the function is going to approach coming in from the right-hand side. Now the actual value of the function, we're told, is really -1. So I'm going to put that in. I'm going to use a different color here because this is one that I actually know. So at -2, the value of the function is -1. So my final curve is going to be in green here. My yellow is just going to be kind of guidelines for myself. Now, as we approach 0 from the left, this is going to approach -infinity. So as we approach 0, we're going to get a vertical asymptote, and that's as we come in from the left, it's going to go to -infinity. So I'm going to leave myself a little clue there by putting that little downward arrow. As we approach 0 from the right, it's going to approach positive infinity. So that means we're going to do something like that. So again, that's just a clue, a note to myself for later. Now we have a limit as we approach 2, and I'm going to change that. I don't know if I can erase that. I didn't want to make that from the right, so I'm going to try to scratch that out. So ignore that. I just want that to be the limit as x approaches 2. I want that to be a two-sided limit. So that means as we approach 2 from the right, it wants to be 2. I'm going to put an open circle there and a tail on each end. I don't know yet if the actual value of the function is going to be 2 or not. So I'm going to leave that to be determined later. And now we can see here that it's actually undefined, so I do need to leave it blank. Okay, now that I have all the clues and to myself, I'm going to come back and go left to right and connect these. So I know it's going to approach y equals 1 on the left, so I'm going to approach that asymptote. The next thing I see is down here where we have a left-hand limit. So I'm going to connect this to there, making sure it's a function. So I want to make sure that whatever I've drawn passes the vertical line test for functions. Now the actual value of the function is up here, but I'm going to leave that as it is. The next thing I see is that we're going to approach there from the right. So I'm going to pick up my graph here and see that it's actually going to go to negative infinity over here. So in some fashion that's still a function, I'm going to show this thing diving down to negative infinity. On the other side, I'm back up here. So, and then the next thing I'm going to do is try to connect it there. So it's going to positive infinity, and then it's going to approach that point from the left. It's undefined there, according to what we said. And then I'm going to pick it up coming out of here from the right, and then I'm going to approach that asymptote there. Now, you're fine to just, in a boring fashion, make it connect there. Now, there are many ways we could approach this asymptote, so I just say this. There's room for artistic license. You could say, because you're trying to be creative, it's going to drop below and then come back and approach that asymptote from below. That would still be perfectly okay. You could say, oh, my function is really exotic, so it's going to, as it leaves here, it's going to approach that asymptote by gradually getting closer and closer and closer, but crossing it an infinite number of times. That would still be acceptable. Okay, good enough.